Okay. I'm super glad to have you in this session. The thing that I like about presentations is I get to talk about stuff that matters so much to me, and the thing I don't like about them is I would much rather have a one-on-one and find out more about you guys and what you know and what your interests are here. I come to this only because it is the thing that seems to matter as much to me as anything else in my life. I identify as straight, and I have a husband and 7 kids and 18 grandchildren. But about 2 decades ago, I began feeling that this issue of how we incorporate LGBT people in our community is perhaps the most important issue of our generation. And I went back to BYU and got my master's and PhD and focused on the research that is available about LGBTQ mental health. Then I founded a clinic based on inviting gay therapists to work with gay young people, and also straight therapists when parents want that, so that they can have competent therapy. And over the past, since the clinic began, we've seen about 6,000 sessions of therapy, and continue to understand what it is that LGBT people are needing in the community. And I hope to work myself out of a job and have a gay, bisexual, lesbian, or transgender person take my job. I had intended today to actually have some people that I work with come, but that did not work out. That's generally what I try to do, so that my voice is set down and other voices are raised. So what I will be doing today is sharing with you voices that you can also access online about some of the resilience that we will be talking about today, which is, as you can see, rock bottom LGBTQ resilience, post-traumatic growth, and self-care. Hopefully you have heard today and yesterday about how important it is that people develop the ability to see their challenges and what has set them back and what has limited them, what has made them feel less than, as the fuel for what is ahead. One of the favorite stories is that, and you probably have heard this, that when NASA was trying to select its very, very first astronauts, who on Earth is going to be okay in space when there's nobody there to turn to and say, help solve this problem? They didn't pick the people who had lived charmed and successful lives, that everything they touched turned out well. They picked people who had experienced major challenges, difficulties, and had had to figure out what to do in order to move forward. This is what we'll be talking about today. Come on in, have a seat. I want you to start by meeting some transgender young people, and I would like for you to see what they consider to be the challenges of simply being themselves. And then we'll talk about it.
Dear 29-year-old Morgan.
Dear 28-year-old AJ.
Dear 22-year-old Charlie.
You probably look and sound very different right now.
One thing you always need to remember is to stay positive.
Just do what makes you happy.
Really hope you found a job and a place to stay.
I'm still performing, making art, making work that I'm proud of.
And not be a bum, please.
And not compromising on my values.
I hope you're in a good place, because honestly, I can't wait until I'm 27 and I'm done with all this teenager garbage. And
Dear 29-year-old Quinn.
Dear 29-year-old Catherine.
Dear 28-year-old Lucy.
I hope that your father has come around and is very, very supportive of you.
Will you ever get there to the point where you're real and everywhere in the hearts of your parents, in the hearts of yourself?
just be happy, please, because I'm miserable right now.
I just wanted to let you know that you're awesome and I love you.
And I hope that you can look in the mirror and finally be happy with who you are and have people who are happy with who you are too.
And just believe in yourself and you're gonna do great. And I love you so much. Love, 19-year-old Morgan.
Awesome. All right. Thanks. Good job. You did great.
I've watched that 100 times and it affects me every single time. And while loving oneself is a difficult task of any teen, it doesn't seem to come naturally. The challenges here are a little bit more, aren't they, Therese? Mm-hmm. What else? Yes, and tell me your name.
Desire for things to get better.
Desire for things to get better. These are not pessimistic people. That's a big one, isn't it, as far as resilience goes, to actually have this sense that things could get better. Others, what do you notice? Yes? Stephanie.
Acceptance.
Acceptance. That's the big thing, isn't it? It's like everything is about where will I fit in my own life and in the lives of other people I care about. Everything, yes.
So one kid said, please let me not be a bump. So for living my truth, I'm having to choose if I have security or not.
Yes.
A home, food.
Yeah, this is not something that's being done lightly, is it? Tell me your name.
Jessica.
Jessica. And you had a hand too?
Yeah, I just like that too. That kind of broke my heart because I know kids that have been asked to leave their homes for reasons like this. Sorry, that really upsets me. But what I really liked about that was the one that said, I just can't wait. I hope you get to be real everywhere you are. And I hope that too. I hope that as a world we get to where we're all real to each other no matter how we are.
And that is the special challenge of people whose identity is not mainstream because they feel invisible. They feel like they are not real to people. People want them to be something else or experience something else. Tell me your name.
Christine.
Christine?
I have kids who come to school and are completely comfortable with their identity that they chose on their life choices.
Mm-hmm.
So when they go home, they have to put on a completely different persona.
Mm-hmm.
And
Thank heavens for school.
it is tragic for them. It is, sorry, I knew this was going to be a rough session. It's just not fair. It's not okay. And I don't know how to reach them or how to help them.
Well, there are no easy answers, but you knowing that what they're experiencing is generating fire for the future will help them feel that too. And by that, I don't mean to whitewash or paint over anything. It's bad.
It is horrible.
It is what other people do not have to deal with, and it does diminish them. There's no doubt about that.
And it exhausts them.
It exhausts them.
They can't function in any other aspect of their life as completely as they could if they could just be one person.
You've said it beautifully, Stephanie. That is exactly right. Yep. Other things that I sort of focused on this side of the room, and that's not fair at all. We only got Susan. What else were you thinking about over here?
I've heard those words. Dad, I thought you were coming around. They go pretty deep. And, when you hear other people say them and then you know you've heard them before, it gets you.
People close to you feeling some of those things. It does get to you, doesn't it? We want to be there for people. We want to understand them. We want to make the journey we need to make in order to be helpful to them. Yep. Nice. Okay. We've sort of touched on this already, but let's see if we can put some words to it. Why would identifying as LGBTQ require resilience? I mean, I have heard people say, oh, that's a movement. They're stronger than straight people now. Like they have all the political power behind them. They are the ones that are the aggressors. All you have to do is go to a pride festival and you see they're strong. Why would identifying as LGBTQ require resilience. Young people don't start out thinking of themselves as different from others, but they start gradually feeling this. The most typical trajectory is to start out thinking, oh, I can push this away. I don't want to be different from other people. And then gradually recognizing that there is something that must be acknowledged and recognized, which then separates them from others. And our research these days is super good in telling us that when we separate from others, mental health suffers, physical health suffers, isolation and feeling apart is the #1 problem. And this is inherent in identifying as something other than straight and heterosexual and cisgender. It is getting better, but there are still only pockets where you can count on it being better. In Salt Lake City, during the winter, the police tell us there are about 200 young people under the age of 18 who are homeless. And at least 50% of them come from families who have asked them to leave because of their identity. Joyner's theory, Thomas Joyner's theory of suicidal ideation reminds us that, and this is borne out in research, that thwarted belongingness is the main factor that creates suicidal ideation. When we want to belong, when we feel like we have something in us that wants to belong and we are not able to belong. When you combine this with perceived burdensomeness, that's where you get people thinking about it more frequently. I'll give you an example. A young person grows up and says, my family thinks that if I am gay, I will not be with them in eternity. I'm not going to tell them I'm gay because that would burden them. I will just quietly someday slip away and they will never have to know. And they can grieve over me as a dead person easier than they can grieve over me as someone who would burden them. And I give that as an example because I have heard that over and over and over from young people who do not want to disappoint their families. So what we're talking about belonging and about why resilience is needed, is socio-cultural trauma. That is the sense that what I am receiving from my community is actually, as Stephanie so well explained, diminishing me as a person. Only Stephanie's talking about receiving it from family, where the school actually is providing the sustenance and the opportunity to turn this into a different skill other than just withdrawal. Here are the six paths we will talk about today. Number 1, restoring dignity and belief in self, identifying personal strengths, cultivating and restoring relationships, solidarity with others in social issues, creativity and appreciating life and what one can contribute to it and experience, and reclaiming spirituality. And as I put this together, each one of these has some evidence-based research behind it. But the order of these is what I have experienced is necessary. Although sometimes relationships can be maintained and restored first, and then the others come. But often it goes in this order if a person is pretty isolated. So we'll start with restoring dignity and belief in self.
Hey guys, I'm Haley Kyoko, and I am here to tell you that it gets better. Honestly, I've felt alone my whole life, really, and that's something that I've really struggled with, feeling kind of isolated. I grew up isolating myself because I was living in fear of judgment from other people. Whether they would judge me or not, I was too afraid to take that chance to be judged. The people that I turned to, a lot of them were friends, and sometimes they were acquaintances. I get like emotional thinking about it, because sometimes like your biggest fear is to be judged by the people that are the closest to you. And sometimes it's easier to open up to someone that's maybe not as close to you, just in case they react a certain way. And so that kind of creates this like safety net and barrier. So I remember in 7th grade, I came out to one of my friends, but I didn't tell my best friends because I was too nervous. Her response was very like, okay. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, crying. And, you know, every time I told someone and every time I came out, I was always very emotional because it felt very vulnerable, because it was very vulnerable. But it helped me realize that I was my biggest judge. I was judging myself. And as soon as I learned to not judge myself, the coming out process became a lot easier. I think it's important to celebrate National Coming Out Day to remind not only ourselves but other people that our feelings are valid and important and that we're not alone. I think a lot of the time we are going through our own struggle and we feel like no one else is feeling that way. And so it's nice to be able to be like, hey, like I came out 5 years ago, or I came out yesterday or last year, and I went through the same thing you went through. Something that's always stuck with me is that I'm enough. I used to have like little like sticky notepads, or what are those called? Stick-its? Post-its, yeah. I had a little post-it by my bed and it said, you are enough. And I think a lot of times when you're trying to come out or wanting to come out to yourself, you don't feel enough because you feel different. And so that's really important to remind yourself that you are. If you're feeling isolated or alone, one of my little tips would be to tell yourself that you love yourself 10 times in the morning. I do it every morning. I wake up, I lay in bed, I close my eyes, and I say, I love you, Haley. I love you, Haley. And I know that sounds super cheesy and stupid, but it really helps me center myself and be gentle with myself and be open to whatever may come that day or obstacles that I may endure. So I encourage you to do that. For more stories of inspiration and for local resources in your area, please visit itgetsbetter.org.
So I'm interested in what you noticed. I should have said before we started, look for clues about restoring personal dignity and self-acceptance, and what skills were necessary, what she did to move that direction, the resilience skills. What did you notice? Yes?
I just liked how she pointed out that it was almost, she never used the exact words, but it was almost like each time she told someone it was a weight lifted off. And it was a really emotional thing, but it's so significant to note that how she said it's a little bit easier to start a little farther away. She told a friend, but it wasn't her best friend. It wasn't one that was.
No, it was someone she was reasonably certain was safe, right?
But I think that is really telling for her in that she sees their reaction, and then the more she goes through it, the more it's actually like, wait, I don't care what your reaction is. Like,
yeah.
I'm waiting for a certain one, and all of you could have different ones, and I still would feel the same.
Yeah. And so identifying that core that can respond no matter how other people, it takes time, doesn't it? And so it was a development. Tell me your name.
I'm Gracie.
Gracie? Yes, and you had a hand up?
When I was thinking about my childhood and growing up and how much I hated myself, and then I was able to think, okay, what if I applied a knowledge that I definitely am not average to on top of whatever I was experiencing at that time, because, you know, complete self-loathing, doubting. And
it's endemic to that age, isn't it?
Yeah, and then I was thinking about the things that assisted me to get out of that self-hate cycle, and the exact same things that she was talking
Isn't
about.
that interesting?
So it was a really, it's just
you could identify with her through this. And did you pick up on one of those? Can you maybe name one of those things that you did, that she did?
The self-mantras.
The self-mantra, the I am enough, both reading it and saying it to yourself in some way. I did that too. Psycho-cybernetics was big when I was okay.
I was just saying it's an active practice. Like resilience isn't something that just happens. You
Yes.
have to practice.
You have to practice it, just like you were saying. And tell me your name. Ashley. And you?
Melinda.
Melinda. I won't remember all these, but I will keep trying. So yes, it's an active practice to not just hope you wake up one day and feel resilient, but you actually have to do things to remind these neurons that you're enough, or to remind these neurons that you love yourself. The heart math people have done a great job of doing research to show us that when we actually send our own hearts love, we can alter our own physiology and our own mental health. So these things that she's talking about are not just throwaways, they're powerful. Another comment, yes?
I just think the resilience, this is probably something that's small, but when she came out the first time, she's not out.
Oh no, out is like a lifelong, right?
Yeah, continuously, and I think that's a self-resilient thing in itself.
Yep.
She's got to wake up every day and meet somebody new and
Yep.
come out again.
Yeah, that develops the resilience, doesn't it? It is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Yep, thanks. Jesse, right? Yes. I can read that far. Thank you. All right, number 2, identifying personal strengths. And one of my favorite ways of doing this in the therapy room is to use this, the Values in Action Character Strengths Survey, which has been around for a long time, and it has both a youth and an adult version, and it's free. It says it takes 30 minutes. People who read fast can do it much faster. And it will give you your 5 top strengths out of 30. And this, really, it's been around for like 30 years and been researched. And if you'll take us to that website for just a moment, Mark, we'll take a look at it so you can see it. There we have the adult survey, and there we have the youth survey right next to it. And it's fairly easy to take. It's not like that Myers-Briggs thing where you go, I don't know which I prefer. I like both. How do I decide? This is much easier, I found, to identify what your strengths are. And I use it particularly with suicidal clients because they don't feel like they belong, have something to contribute, and they feel like they're a burden. And when they know what their strengths are, they start to see themselves as somebody that has something to offer. Okay, back to the PowerPoint. Mark, thank you so much. How does knowing your strengths promote resilience? Well, we've sort of touched on this. What do you think? I'd love to get your input. Yes, and tell me your name.
I'm Lindsay.
Lindsay.
I really loved what Hassan said in his speech about filling the balloon. And I think knowing your strengths and recognizing those, all of those things fill the balloon. So when things come, that helps us be able to bounce back. That promotes our resilience.
Yeah.
By finding those things and recognizing them.
Knowing that we're not deflated when something comes along to punch the balloon.
Right.
Yep. Yes.
You have to start from a foundation and build from there. So if you meet yourself where you're at and you know where you're at, then you can build on that.
Yes. And I'm trying to remember your name. Jessica. Thank you, Jessica. Yes, it says you do have something to build on. You are not empty. Balloon-wise, you have something. Yes?
I was just going to say one of the things that you touched on that people have the most trouble with is feeling like they're a burden to someone.
Yes.
So if they can find their strengths and realize the way they can serve others and help others,
yes.
That's such an empowering thought.
Yes. If they can know what it is they actually have to contribute, usually what happens when they read off what their basic strengths are, they will say, oh yeah. Like they already know this about themselves at some level. They just didn't realize that it was maybe more salient to them than to the other people around them. We are notorious for not knowing why other people value us. We don't know. So something like this can help people recognize this is what you offer other people. Other people value you for this, even if you don't have the ones that are somewhere else along the list that you may crave, because we all crave what we don't have. That's normal. How does knowing your strengths promote belonging and heal burdensomeness? We sort of just touched on that. I'll move on. But I want you to see that knowing your strengths can actually help fight suicide. Number 3, cultivating and restoring relationships. For many people who cannot find belonging within their family, they have to find other people to belong to and call it our chosen family. And the Gap put together an, well, you may have heard about the YouTube show, Chosen Family, at least that's where I watch it, that has episodes of how LGBT people are creating belonging where they don't feel like they're burdening people. But the Gap has a really great ad that plays on this, and I'll let Mark bring that up for us.
Family can be whoever you choose.
It can be the people that you find in this world, the people who you show up for every single day.
The ones who make you better, that force you to move forward. Trans, cis, genderqueer, straight, non-binary, undecided, love belongs to us all.
How many of you are familiar with the Family Acceptance Project out of San Francisco State University? Okay, great, then that's exactly where we should go. Family Acceptance Project was started by Dr. Caitlin Ryan, who has been the premier researcher in the country for what helps families thrive when they have a young person who identifies as queer or transgender. She's got her newly released posters. She actually has booklets for families that are you can get from the state, you can get from here, you can get them from me, I will give them to you. If you have, it's not going to go there, okay. So Stephanie's question is pertinent to everyone, perhaps. You can have these booklets on hand to give to families and then invite them to either come in and talk to a school counselor or to talk to the counselors in our area who specialize in this, which include the counselors at Encircle and the counselors at Flourish Therapy, which is where I have my practice. Encircle is the LGBT Youth and Family Resource Center.
Like EN?
EN, mm-hmm. Just one word. And they have community gathering places in Provo and Salt Lake, and they also have therapists. School counselors are generally pretty interested in talking to young people and their parents, if the parents will actually come in.
No, I didn't say that. I'm just saying, is someone from this organization, can you bring them in to talk to school counselors?
Oh, from this organization? They would love to. As a matter of fact, Caitlin Ryan comes to Utah probably once a month to do some kind of training. She's done training for all the university counseling centers. She just did a training for the school board here in Utah. So yes.
Does it cost to do that? Or?
Well, the people who have offered it for free to their people who are being trained. But I know she does charge for that. And I would be happy to come do it for anybody who is interested. Please feel free to contact me. This is my life. It's what I do. Yes, these are the posters. They're down here. Oh, I'm going to get competent here. These are the posters, and they are, you can do 8.5 by 11 and pass them out, or you can make them big and cover half of a wall. But what they do is they say these behaviors that a family does have been correlated with positive outcomes for LGBTQ young people. And these behaviors that a family does have been correlated with outcomes for young people that families don't want. The interesting thing is, most of the behaviors that families do that are correlated with poor outcomes are things families are doing to try to protect their young person. They're doing it because they love their young person. They want them not to be made fun of. They want them to fit in. They want them to participate with the family. They want the family values to wrap their arms around their young people. But what ends up happening is it communicates, but you don't really belong in our family unless you conform to what we're asking you to do. And so it creates a message that young people perceive in their young people mind as rejection. And the outcomes that are correlated with things as simple as these are behaviors that increase well-being. Can you read them from there? I'll read you a couple. Tell your LGBTQ or gender diverse child that you love them. Ask your child if and how you can help them tell other people about their LGBTQ identity. Find a congregation that welcomes your child and your family. Tell your LGBTQ and gender diverse child that you will be there for them even if you don't fully understand. This is just the first. There's like 5 of these. And behind, pressure your child to be more or less open about who they are. Refuse to take them to be with other people who are like them. Avoid going to pride festivals. Prevent them from having an LGBTQ friend. Telling them that it is probably just a phase. Telling them that they're ashamed of them. Other ones are telling them that God will punish them. Telling them that they won't have a happy life. Inviting them to change how they dress and how they act. Those are the kinds of behaviors, those ones I just talked about, that young people perceive as rejecting, that actually are associated with suicide attempts 8 times, not just 80% more, 800% more than young people whose families are doing these. And this is set out in a booklet that you can, the posters you can get for your school, and the booklets that you can give to families that actually show the research in a really accessible way are also available. I know I have several dozen at home, and Deborah, you probably do too. Okay, we'll go back. But that's a great website, that family acceptance website. They offer lots of materials. Okay. All right, and now we're going to let a young man tell us about his ideas for self-care when dealing with friends and family that are not affirming.
Hello there, my name is Brian G. Murphy, and I'm here to recruit you. Actually, I just want to talk to you about self-care today. It sucks that there are still people in the world who haven't accepted that it's okay to be LGBTQ. Maybe those are your friends or your family or people at church or synagogue or just some jerk on the sidewalk. Whoever it is, if you're out for long enough, chances are you're going to encounter at least one person that says something or does something that makes you feel uncomfortable or unsafe or unwelcome. And so what I want to do today is talk about how we can prevent that from happening and how we can keep ourselves safe even if it does happen. I know that for me, before I came out and as I was coming out and after I came out, people in my life who were close to me said and did some really messed up things. The youth pastor at my church told us that it was a sin to be gay. My parents called my coming out and my sexuality my revelation for way too long. One year on New Year's Eve, my dad kicked out my friends because my boyfriend was amongst them. I wasn't allowed to attend my boyfriend's sister's wedding, and even today, my boyfriend's father doesn't call me his boyfriend. Instead, he calls me his son's buddy. At first, I thought I just had to sit there quietly and take it. That people who were anti-LGBT had more of a right to comfort than I did. That I had to be uncomfortable so that they could be comfortable. And then I realized that's just not true. That it's okay to be LGBT and that I have a right to be comfortable and affirmed all the time. And if someone's against that, well, they can be uncomfortable. When my family wasn't okay with me being gay, at some point I realized that I just couldn't be around them as much. I started coming home less and less. I didn't talk about things as deeply with them as I used to. I turned to my friends and my friends' parents, and I began to cultivate a chosen family. And I told my parents, you know, I have support in my life, and you're beginning to miss out, and if you wait too long to get your shit together, it's gonna be too late. Today my family has come around, and my parents are wonderfully supportive. My boyfriend is treated like he's one of the family, and I'm pretty sure that they like him more than me. But it wasn't always this way, and so I had to come up with ways to keep myself safe regardless of what the world threw at me. Here's some of the things that I learned. It's okay to set boundaries. That could be a physical boundary, like I'm not gonna come home as often, or I'm only gonna come home for a certain period of time, or I'm gonna have a car with me so that I can leave whenever I need to. That could also be an emotional boundary, like this is what we can or cannot talk about. This is how you will refer to me or how you won't refer to me. This is how much or how little I'm willing to share with you. Having a support system in place is crucial. For me, that meant having some friends nearby that I could physically escape to. Sometimes that was just an afternoon away or a lunch, and one time I even went and spent the night at a friend's house after a really uncomfortable conversation with my dad. That also means having friends that I know I can text or IM or email or group chat with to just let things off my chest or get advice or just have some safe place to retreat to when this sort of the world around me is a little bit chaotic feeling. I also totally used art as a form of comfort and escapism. Sometimes I would blast an album that felt really good, or I would lose myself in a movie or a TV series just to sort of remind myself that like there is good and beauty in the world and to feel connected to something bigger than myself. I also journaled. I would write sometimes freehand on paper and sometimes on the computer like in Evernote or text edit or whatever, and just sort of process what I was going through. Sometimes it would be like, dear diary, this is what happened today. Sometimes I would make plans. Sometimes I would write letters to my parents or my friends that I was planning on sending or that I would never send, just to sort of get it off my chest and see what I was thinking sort of laid out there. It helped me make sense of what I was going through and made me feel a little bit more sane. Sometimes self-care means leaning into difficult situations or engaging in tough conversations. It means saying, this is what I need and that's okay, and I'm not gonna settle for anything less. That's a radical thought, and it can make people uncomfortable or even angry. I'm definitely not an expert at this by any means. I'm still figuring this one day at a time, week after week, month after year, trying to make the best of everything that life throws at me. But I have figured out a few things, and over at Queer Theology, we put together an email series on self-care tips for dealing with friends and family that aren't affirming. It comes from a sort of Christian perspective, but I think that the tactics and the lessons will be applicable to anyone regardless of your situation. So if you want to get more of that, you can head on over to queertheology.com/selfcare and we'll send you those videos and lessons over right away. I would love to hear from you. What are some shitty situations that you found yourself in? And what are some of the things that you've done to take care of yourselves? Let us all know in the comments below so we can figure out how to take better care of ourselves together. That's all for now, and I will see you soon. Bye!
What did you hear in this about resilient skills that he found useful and that might be useful in reclaiming self? Yes, Doris.
How he came to the realization that his being comfortable was just as valuable as anything else.
Wow, and that it was okay to
if they didn't like how he was, then that was really in their court to deal with.
His primary job was not to make them comfortable.
For the way they felt about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see the light in his countenance.
That created resilience, didn't it?
Yeah, he's really made it work. Even though he said he's not an expert, I'm thinking, wow.
Convincing me. Thanks, Therese. I love that part too. Yes, and tell me your name. I didn't ask.
Jim.
Jim, hi.
I like the fact that he talked about boundaries and how he learned how to establish
boundaries
and gave examples of that. I think that's true in any case when somebody's abused or feeling abused emotionally.
Yes, it's true in any case. Boundaries with what has harmed us before and may harm us again is really important resiliency skill.
Those around Thanksgiving time for ourselves. Yeah.
The holidays are a great time to practice these things. Yes, Jim, is true. Solidarity with others in social issues. Why is this important? He said something about how important it is to be with other people who have similar approaches to things. I cannot stress enough how important that is. At the end of every session with a suicidal person, one of the most important things I assess is, who do you connect with? Who can you call? If you want to go home today and tell somebody about this session, it's okay with me if you don't, but if you do, who would you call? How many people would be interested in what you would say about this session today, whether you liked it or didn't like it? Who would listen to you? Helping people develop these kinds of connections is the #1 thing to do. Solidarity with others in social issues is a way of finding out who feels the same way you do. So having young people get involved in issues of our day actually protects their mental and physical health, as long as they're not rioting in the streets with the police who are, fighting back. Okay, and we're not going to watch all of this. I'll give you a signal when we stop.
My
President Trump announced a rollback of transgender student bathroom protections. LGBTQ activists were quick to rise up against him. This is a community that has had decades of practice in fighting for and defending its rights, dating back to a time when it had almost none. A new ABC miniseries is shining a light on this ongoing struggle, and here's ABC's Elizabeth Vargas.
Trans equality now! Trans equality now!
It was an emotional scene of resistance just steps away from the White House lawn.
Shame on Trump! Protect trans students!
Hundreds gathering on Pennsylvania Avenue last week to protest President Trump's revoking of the rule allowing transgender students to use the bathroom in which they identify. 17-year-old Gavin Grimm is the lead plaintiff in a lawsuit to be settled by the Supreme Court later this month.
No one, not even the government, can defeat a community so full of life, color, diversity, and most importantly, love.
Trans Americans across the country standing up to fight.
I want to say something first before we do. That is, the transgender experience is one that is difficult for lots of people. Because when we're in first grade, we have divided up the world between who is male and who is female, at least when I went to first grade. And that was the number one thing you wanted to find out about someone. That explained everything else you needed to know about how you would play with them and whether you would invite them over and whether you would call them on the phone, whether you would socialize in this way or that way. That was the number one thing to know. And for people of my generation, that still tends to be where our neural pathways go, is trying to figure that out. And more transgender people do not care about what's called passing. Passing means if I identify as female, do you look at me and see female and respond to me as a female? That's passing, regardless of what my anatomy is, which of course you have no right to ever know about. And if you wonder about it, you keep that to yourself along with all the other things we as human beings wonder about, but it's nobody's business what my body looks like, except maybe my doctor's, and maybe somebody I'm going to marry. But having said that, we get in our minds that we want to know what people look like. And I would like you to know that most of the transgender people that I work with do pass, even though it's not cared about as much. And what I mean by that is if they went to the bathroom that belonged to their anatomy, you would probably have a difficult time being in the bathroom with them if you're expecting somebody who fits like you. So transgender issues are huge issues. Most transgender people I know have created a sense of themselves that belongs in a bathroom that they would choose. Okay. Creativity and appreciation of life. This is just a little quote. Look deeply into nature, then you will understand everything better. What I want to do here is invite you to think about what nature and creativity has done for you as far as helping you solidify your identity, sort of in the pathway that Ashley was talking to us about identifying and owning these things ourselves. What has nature done for you? What has creativity and appreciation for life done for you as a human being? And we'll extrapolate that to what it would mean to people who don't belong in the same way. You can collect yourself and think, get to know yourself away from all the impact of the cacophony of the world.
I think about being in nature. I think about the ability to just be.
To be.
Yeah, there's no judgment, there's no other voices, there's just beauty and purity. It's innocence, I feel like.
It can restore that to us,
Yeah,
can it? Like,
and it's grounding. It's
grounding.
incredible. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Jesse.
Theater, I've got a theater degree.
A theater degree?
Yeah, and theater's been fantastic for myself and several of my students. But
Yeah.
Yeah, just transforming. You get to be somebody else. You get
Mhm.
to get your problems out of your mind for a while.
Mm-hmm. While identifying as someone else and maybe incorporating some of them into your personality or at least exploring it or expanding yourself. Yep, theater is great. Fantastic. Okay. That was just what we did. How has it sparked your resilience? How has creativity sparked your resilience? Let's ask that question. How has creativity sparked your very own resilience? Yes, Ashley?
I'm an art teacher. I used painting as a way to deal with some trauma in the past, and it was helpful to survive the emotional experience and then come out with something on the other side.
That represent
physical, like, oh,
tangible.
Not only did I survive the emotional experience, but now I have something that's created from it. And it's like a, now I don't have words for that thing.
No, you don't. You don't. But it represents the process and the pain.
Yeah, but it was like there's a positive physical proof that I grew something out of this.
Yes. Physical, positive proof that you grew something out of this. That is profound.
It was really ugly, but it was
And really great art can be for that. And in my experience, young people with piercings and tattoos are doing just what Ashley said. They are memorializing something they have been through. I have never been disappointed when I've asked someone, tell me about that I see, that they will tell me about some pain they have been through and that this is their tangible evidence of resilience. This is my survival. Susan.
Great. It also makes you less invisible.
Makes you less invisible. Yeah, you have something to show. And even if people don't get the whole story when they see your art, there's something about it that communicates. And you have this secret. You have the secret. Yep.
For me,
Melinda?
Yeah, sometimes my life will be really out of control. And
Life out of control? Mm-hmm.
And I sit down and I'll make a quilt.
And you'll make a quilt?
Because I can control it. Because I can't control
Yes, it is within your,
world,
to create this beauty.
Moment to use my creativity to do something else where I actually feel like I have power when
Yes.
there's so much I can't control that gives me power to control.
And then you have something afterward that says, I did this. I put this into the world. I made this. Lovely. Jesse, you had your hand up.
Kind of the same. It's strictly yours.
Yeah.
Your art and creativity is yours. So you can choose to share it or not, but it's something you have power over completely.
Yep. Asking young people about what they have created is a great way to increase their resilience. Invite them to show you their artwork, to bring in something they've written, to share with you, to bring their ukulele and sing a song. They'll say, no, 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 and then they'll do it because they want to share, and that does create resilience. Last one, reclaiming spirituality. This is the one I want to end on.
I did hope, I did desperately hope that you would all be gay.
I just don't think that any parent would hope for a child to be challenged like that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear a word you said.
Sorry, this isn't coming out right. All I'm trying to say is that what I mean to say is life is hard enough as it is, and it just seems to me that you wouldn't want to make it any more difficult for your child.
Contrary to what many might think, being queer is not a disadvantage. In fact, I've learned that in life, many times what is labeled as disadvantaged are actually advantages. But you have to be willing to look at it from a different perspective. Take the well-known biblical story of David and Goliath, for example. Shepherd boy David was not disadvantaged against the Philistine giant Goliath, despite what everyone believed that day on the battlefield and 3,000 years since. He, in reality, had a different skill set, unbeknown to the public, that led him to his victory. He was skilled at artillery, previously using this talent to fight off bears and lions as a shepherd to protect his flock. That day, he simply used his natural God-given gifts, and it transformed his life and those around him. Like David was at first, queer people are often met with name-calling, laughter, and the threat of bodily harm caused by the Goliaths of a heteronormative culture. But as the legend teaches us, cultural expectations rarely reflect what God has planned. So here are some spiritual advantages to being queer that I have learned as a gay man myself, but also as a religious studies educator. A queer spirituality is life-affirming with positive views of sex. Many Christian religions emphasize asceticism, that is, life-denying practices. Catholicism, for example, says homosexuality is a disordered nature in which one can never act on. This approach ignores the Genesis 1 truth that all humans reflect the image of God. In regards to sex, the queer community recognizes that it certainly has a reproductive function, but it doesn't ignore the other functions of intimacy, romanticism, love, and pleasure. Even though these functions of sex are emphasized in Song of Solomon, many Christian denominations still demonize sex and label it as a product of original sin, referring to it as a necessary evil in which one should never enjoy. Why do you think the perpetual virginity of Mary is held in such high esteem, and why Catholic clergy are celibate? Christians are terrified of sex. Being queer leads to an empathy and compassion for others, particularly for the poor and vulnerable. This, in fact, was one of Jesus' primary messages for his followers, to see the person rather than the letter of a law. He taught a message of inclusion, forgiveness, and love, and welcomed all to his table, especially those who society shunned. Now, of course, Jesus received grief for who he associated with, but he just didn't care. Being queer can open your mind to looking outside the box and beneath the surface in all matters of life. And let's admit, getting in touch with spirituality is definitely outside the box. Non-spiritual people often roll their eyes at anything spiritual because, let's admit it looks kinda hokey. Peter even acknowledged this at the first Christian Pentecost when he said that the apostles had a reputation for appearing drunk. Let me be clear, you will not be able to recognize God if you only look at things on the surface. Being queer has taught me to deconstruct popular ways of doing and seeing things. A key component of queer theology, deconstructionism, breaks down traditions, beliefs, laws, etc., and then explores their origin and how they have developed through time and through cultural influences. Admittingly, it's easier and oftentimes safer to fall into a habit of conformity by reiterating theology told from one particular point of view. But it's ultimately better in the long run to really get to the truth, rather than simply reaffirming a tradition of a particular hermeneutic. After all, there are 4 canonical Gospels, 4 different interpretations of Jesus, not just one. Being queer has taught me to transcend labels, knowing that you can never truly see a person if you're quick to categorize them. Labeling is a form of dehumanization, leading the transgressor away from ever knowing what's really in front of them. This is one reason why Jesus' contemporaries couldn't see him as the Messiah, because they were too caught up on labeling him a blasphemer. And with that said, being queer makes you more like Jesus than you thought. From his parables, sermons, miracles, and just simply the way he lived daily, Jesus would have been regarded by his contemporaries as an unconventional or queer person. The 1970s musical theater production of Godspell portrays the queerness of Christ best by dressing him as a clown in order to illustrate how goofy he and his teachings were for his time. As a queer person of faith, I find myself not only in solidarity with the outcast that Christ ministered to, but also with Christ himself. So those are just some spiritual advantages I've come to recognize over the years. With that said, queerness is not my sole identity. I'm also a teacher, a father, a husband, a director, a companion, just to name a few. Sexuality is a part of a person, but shouldn't be any more of a defining characteristic of an identity than eye color. Queerness rejects labels, so don't limit yourself by labeling yourself. After all, David proved to the Goliaths of his day that he was much more than the mere shepherd boy that he was labeled as.
And while this one focused on reclaiming Christianity in a way that you may or may not agree with, it certainly had a positive impact on this person's life. And Christianity is not the only spirituality that can be reclaimed, of course. This is a task of all people to find a way to live into their faith and live into their identity in ways that the world has not really made room for. I think there may be one more slide. And it is now 10:50, so we will leave this question for you, how you will engage in this important question of helping to create LGBTQ resilience in our world. Thank you so much.